I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when my phone buzzed, and in that one moment, my entire morning went from calm to absolutely unbelievable. My neighbor sent me a photo, and I almost dropped my mug right there on the kitchen floor. My private land, 20 acres of family history, was packed with white folding chairs, a giant flower arch, food trucks, and at least 200 strangers in wedding clothes. And right in the middle of it all? Karen, HOA president. Gold dress. Sunglasses. Acting like she owned the place. She didn't ask. She didn't pay. She didn't even tell me, and she had no idea she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Hey guys, welcome to HOA Fallout. If you've ever dealt with a pushy neighbor, or if you've had someone try to take advantage of you, you're gonna love this one. Before we get into the full insane story of how Karen tried to turn my property into her personal wedding venue, and how karma showed up in uniform, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment with the craziest thing a neighbor's ever done to you. I read every single one, and trust me, you won't believe how this ends. I was in my kitchen, halfway through my first cup of coffee, when my phone buzzed. It was my neighbor, Tom. He asked, "Hey, did you rent out your property for a wedding?" I frowned and said no, wondering why he'd even ask that. Then he sent me a picture, and I swear I almost dropped my coffee. My land, private land with clear, "No trespassing" signs, was completely covered in rows of white folding chairs, a giant flower arch, and at least 200 people dressed like they were in a Hallmark movie. And right there in the center was Karen, the HOA president, strutting around in a gold dress and sunglasses like she owned the place. She never asked me, never paid me, never even told me. She just decided my property was now her personal wedding venue. That's when I knew, this was the moment Karen went too far, and she had no idea she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. My property isn't just a patch of land, it's 20 acres of open, rolling pasture with soft green grass. In the spring, a big shimmering pond right in the middle, and an old red barn my grandfather built with his own hands back in the 60s. Every summer, the wildflowers take over and it looks like something straight out of a postcard. It's not just land to me, it's family history, it's memories, it's the one place I can breathe. About 4 years ago, a brand new subdivision popped up right next door, Oak Hollow. Overnight, my quiet little world had rows of identical houses, perfectly trimmed lawns, and of course, the dreaded HOA. And the queen of that HOA? Karen. The very first time I met her, she pulled up in this shiny, spotless Lexus while I was out fixing my front gate. She stepped out wearing oversized sunglasses, a pastel blazer, and that kind of smile that looks warm until you realize it's more of a sales pitch. "Hi, I'm Karen, president of the Oak Hollow Homeowners Association," she announced, like it was supposed to impress me. I said hello, but before I could even ask what she wanted, she was gesturing at my pasture with both hands, saying how perfect it would be for community gatherings, maybe a farmer's market, maybe outdoor movie nights. I laughed, not to be rude, but because I thought she was joking, and told her politely that I wasn't interested. That's when her smile got tighter. "Well, maybe you'll change your mind," she said in this sing-song voice that didn't sound like a question. I thought that would be the end of it, but oh no. Over the next couple of years, every time she saw me, whether I was checking the mailbox, grabbing groceries, even just out walking the dog, she'd bring it up again. And every time, the idea had evolved. One week she said it would help property values, another week she called it a shame to let such a pretty space go unused, and one time she actually tried the money angle. You could make a nice profit renting it out. And every single time, my answer was no. Firm, polite, but no. She'd just smile, tilt her head, and walk away like she knew better, like she was sure I'd eventually cave. Then, one afternoon, she started telling me about this perfect rustic wedding she'd been planning, talking about how barns were trendy, how outdoor weddings were all the rage, and I should have seen it right then. She wasn't just daydreaming. She was plotting. Looking back, the signs were everywhere, but at the time I just thought Karen was being, well, Karen. A couple of months before the wedding, I noticed more traffic than usual going past my driveway. At first, I figured it was just delivery drivers or maybe folks from the new neighborhood cutting through. But then I started seeing cars I didn't recognize slow down and actually pull over to the side of the road near my property. Sometimes they'd get out, take pictures of the barn, or point toward the pond. One afternoon, I even caught a guy in a suit jacket pacing along my fence line, talking into his phone like he was describing the place. I walked over and asked if I could help him, and he just stammered something about checking the lighting before hopping into his car and peeling off. That was weird enough, but then came the tense. I was driving back from town one Saturday when I noticed a couple of large white event tents folded up and leaning against the barn, on my property. I had no idea how they got there. No note, no message, nothing. I hauled them into the barn to keep them from blowing away, figuring someone left them by mistake. But here's the thing, 2 days later, they were gone. Not stolen, just gone. Around the same time, a landscaping crew I didn't hire was working along the edge of my pond. I stopped to ask who sent them, and they told me the client had already paid in full. When I asked who the client was, they shrugged and said they only dealt with the wedding planner. And that's when my stomach dropped. It hit me all at once, the extra cars, the random people scouting the property, the disappearing tents, the mysterious landscaping, it was all connected. And the only person bold enough to pull something like this on my land without asking was Karen. I didn't have proof yet, but I could feel it in my bones. That's when I decided to keep my mouth shut and let her dig herself in deeper. Because if she thought she could throw a wedding on my property without permission, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. The morning of the wedding, I woke up to the sound of music, faint, but loud enough to hear from inside my house. I looked out my window and nearly choked on my coffee. My quiet pasture was gone. In its place, there was a full-blown wedding setup straight out of a magazine. White folding chairs were lined up in perfect rows facing the pond, with a huge floral arch at the front. There were fairy lights strung between poles, an open-air bar already stocked with champagne, and 2 food trucks parked just inside my fence line. People were everywhere, dressed to the nines, laughing, sipping mimosas, taking selfies in front of the barn like it was theirs. And right in the middle of it all was Karen, wearing a gold dress and barking orders into a headset like she was directing a movie. She didn't even see me standing there, jaw on the floor. For a split second, I almost walked over and shut it all down. But then I remembered, I'd been planning for this. I had already called the sheriff's office the night before, giving them a heads up about possible trespassing. I had my property deed, photographs of my no trespassing signs, and security camera footage from the past month showing strangers hauling stuff in. So I just stood there, watching, as the music got louder and the guests kept arriving, hundreds of them, completely oblivious that they were all standing on someone else's land without permission. Then, right as the ceremony was about to start, I saw the sheriff's cruiser pull up. 2 deputies stepped out, and I swear I've never seen such a satisfying change in someone's expression. Karen went from smug queen bee to deer in the headlights in about 2 seconds flat. The deputies walked straight up to Karen. I could see her trying to plaster that fake smile back on, but it was slipping fast. One of them asked her if she had permission from the property owner to be here. She didn't even glance my way, just launched into this whole speech about how the community needed spaces like this, how it was practically unused land, and how she didn't think I would mind. The deputy let her talk, then slowly pointed at me standing by the fence. "Ma'am, that's the owner. You might want to check with him." The look on her face? Priceless. She actually tried to spin it, saying I'd verbally agreed months ago. I cut her off right there, loud enough for every guest to hear, and laid it all out. I had never given permission, she had trespassed, brought in uninvited guests, and used my land for a for-profit event without my consent. The deputies asked to see my proof, so I handed over my property deed and the security footage. That was it. The wedding was officially shut down. The deputies gave everyone 15 minutes to clear out, and the guests, well, let's just say the vibe turned from celebration to awkward shuffling real quick. People were grabbing purses, unpinning boutonnieres, dumping champagne, and avoiding eye contact. Karen was arguing with the deputies, but it wasn't helping her. She ended up getting slapped with trespassing charges and a hefty fine, not to mention the lawsuit I filed afterward for damages and unauthorized commercial use of my property. She lost. Big time. Between legal fees, the settlement, and the fact that the whole neighborhood now knew exactly what she'd done, her little HOA throne crumbled. She resigned a month later, and last I heard, she quietly put her house up for sale. And me? I went right back to enjoying my land in peace. The thing is, it wasn't about the money or the legal win, it was about drawing a line. People like Karen think they can just take what they want, that no is negotiable. But sometimes, the only way to teach them is to let them build their whole little fantasy on top of your property, and then pull the ground out from under them. In the end, it wasn't about the money or the legal win, it was about boundaries. Because some people think no is negotiable. They think they can just take what they want and you'll roll over. But sometimes, the best revenge is letting them build their little fantasy, and then pulling the ground right out from under them. So if you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life drama, and let me know in the comments, what would you have done if you found 200 strangers partying on your property? I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching my video.